All right, hi guys. I missed you all last week. The kids team, student team, we went to a 2-day conference. We learned a lot. It was really, really good. But I missed you guys. Tonight, just for a bit, we want to talk about emotional health. Emotional health and how much this matters when leading a group. So yeah, we're flipping things a little bit. We're doing group stuff first tonight, and then we'll get to DNA. So researchers have identified 4 emotions, all right? The basic 4 emotions that by facial expression can be universally recognized across the world, okay? I did a little research myself. So we have 42 facial muscles in our face, okay? This is really interesting. And so they put sensors all over their face, but they found that universally 4 are recognized, and they are happy, sad, mad, and scared. Happy, sad, mad, and scared. So obviously, we have all these different sub-emotions that can fall into one of these 4 categories, right? But these are the 4 basic emotions. So we're emotional beings, right? We're created that way. We feel things. That's how God wired us, and that's good. And harnessed correctly, specifically in a group, your emotions can and they will play a huge role in the leadership of a group. But they can also be a huge distraction. I'm sure some of us have seen that. They can destroy a group if we aren't careful. So hear me out tonight. I'm going to say this up front. We're not saying that to lead a group you have to be void of emotion, right? That's not at all what we're saying. Or void of being able to express these 4. In fact, when you're in tune with these in a very healthy way, then you can empathize with people when they're hurting, or you can celebrate with people when they're going through times that are happy and exciting. So when your emotions are healthy, when they're in check, you're going to be the best leader you can be, someone that people want to follow. So here's your next fill in the blank. Being emotional is good. All the women, take a deep breath, right? Yay. It's all good, right? Yeah. So it's good to be happy when something happy happens, right? Or when people have exciting news. It's good to be sad when it's appropriate to be sad. It's good to be mad at times, not very often. But it's good to be scared or have an appropriate amount of fear of certain things. And if you aren't this, if you're completely void of emotion, if you're kind of stoic, then you're really, really hard for people to relate to, okay? Especially in a group. And so this is really important. We want to make sure that we are aware of this. But with emotions being good, right? It's good to be emotional. There are appropriate times and appropriate amounts of emotion. Do we have any Parenthood fans in the room? The show Parenthood? Okay, oh my. All right, so, hi. So Parenthood is a great show. If you don't watch it, you really should. I mean that sincerely. It's on NBC. But Brad and I, my husband, we've gotten really into Parenthood. And it is an emotional show. Can I get a witness? Yeah? Okay. So we are sitting there. Remember, this is all to show you guys appropriate times to show emotion. So Brad, I don't know if he's ashamed, I think that's it, or embarrassed, but we are sitting there, and it's definitely a time to cry, okay? So I'm sitting there silent tears rolling down my face. And I look over at him, and he's laughing. I'm like, what are you doing? And then it turns into this really loud cry. So he is not emotionally healthy. I'm fully aware of that. I'm like, what's your problem? But anyways, in all seriousness, if everything though makes you emotional, right? If you cry all the time about everything, you guys are probably yeah, you.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you're on the other side, if you're completely void, then there's something wrong. Too much or too little emotion is unhealthy, right? So too much or too little emotion, it's unhealthy. There's a lady at church. She's a sweet lady, but I'm not joking, you guys. Every time she comes up to me, she starts to cry. And it doesn't make sense a lot of the times, but before I know it, we're in tears. I'm like, what's going on? I perceive her as emotionally unhealthy. Hate to say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is obviously a sensitive topic. And so there are people that they do, right? Like they just flow, right? They just constantly are emotional. And the way we want you to think about emotional health is, too little is bad, too much is bad, but that we're emotional, like she said. And it really is like a river. Like you should have happy, sad, mad, and scared flowing in your life at the appropriate amounts. And like a river that doesn't have enough water in it, that it's like you see all the tops of the rocks and it's real low, and you see like where the river used to be and now it's really, really low and it's flowing. It's like, man, something's just not healthy about this. That's bad. And when a river is overflowing so that all the emotions are constantly, or the water is just covering the ground all around the river and the river goes away and it's almost like a lake, or you can't really discern the river, that's bad too. And so there's this balance that we're supposed to find in our emotional life. We're supposed to be people who are happy, but not the kind of people that everything is so hilarious. Just this funny thing. You're supposed to be scared of things, but every time a door slams, if you jump, something's not right. Or if someone puts a gun in your face and you're not afraid, something's not right. So there is this kind of healthy path and healthy amount of emotion that we're all supposed to find. And so, as leaders, what we want to show you tonight is that it's important for you to have a healthy balance of emotion in order to be an effective leader.
That's good. So, if you have too much emotion in certain situations, or if you have too little, then you have to kind of ask yourself why this is, right? So why do I feel sad all the time? Or why do I constantly feel like I'm living in fear? You're paralyzed by fear. Why do I feel like I'm never happy? Because usually this is an indicator of more going on, right? More happening inside of you. So here's the reality. Lack of emotional health is a symptom of something, right? It's a symptom of something. So when there's too little or too much, then you need to dig a little deeper, right? And ask yourself, what's the cause? So there's something that, happened to you, something that maybe didn't happen, something traumatic, something that caused your emotions to be a little off. And sometimes it may not be something that's directly related to you, but it's still something that affects you. I think for me, we all have somethings, right? We do. I think one of my somethings that leads me to worry and anxiety, and I think it's how I was raised. And we can totally let's all blame our parents for all our problems. No, but
daddy issues,
right? My mom lost her first husband in a really tragic hunting accident when she was 3 months pregnant with my sister. And so that caused her, she's an awesome mom, but I think that caused her to kind of lead us with a little bit of extra worry, right? And extra fear and extra control. And so not too surprisingly now, that's kind of how I am sometimes. I like to think I control everything all the time. My brother doesn't think so.
No, he thinks you try.
Right? So we have to kind of ask ourselves, what is our something?
Yeah. It's like this, right? If you've ever sat in a conversation with somebody and there's a lot of emotion, or you're guarded, then this is like what's said. Something's going on. Something happened. You got to figure out what that something is, because that something has either been a gateway to excessive emotion or a blockade to too little emotion. And so we all kind of carry around this something. Another analogy is if someone has hauled off and punched me in the forearm really hard, like if my brother Ben hit me, I would bruise quick. But then I put a shirt on and you wouldn't see it. But if I walked past you and I had a really bad bruise, if I walked past you in the hallway, then I might react, because you hurt my bruise. You hit me here. And the guy's like, dude, I just rubbed shoulders with you. Why are you jumping like a jumping bean? Why are you freaking out? Why are you overreacting? Well, because there's something here. Something happened to me. You can't necessarily see it. It's under the surface, but it is really painful. And therefore, I am responding to that, and I'm trying to figure out what that is. For me, you guys see that I'm emotional, and I think sometimes I'm too emotional about families and about parents staying together and parents getting divorced. And I've been through lots of different counseling, family counseling, personal counseling, and I had to have a therapist, and I'm just being real, this year, I was sitting with a therapist, and I'm totally open about the fact that I go every year and talk to somebody one-on-one. And this year, I had a man tell me about this something in my life, and what he told me, which is something I've known for a long time, is that when my parents got divorced when I was 9 years old, that was traumatic. And parents that are hear this are like, duh. Here's what he said to me. He said, you were traumatized. I said, come on. He told me this. I took a test, and he told me that I was depressed. And I was like, dude, I am not depressed. I go home, and Katie's like, what'd you guys talk about? And the guy told me to, talk to Katie. And I was like, I guess I'm depressed. He made me kind of own it. And what he did is he said, Joel, next time you go to church on Sunday, he said, this Sunday, I want you to go up to a 9-year-old boy. He said, and if his parents split up, or mommy or daddy left one day, anywhere around how yours did, don't you think that'd be really hard for that little boy? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, and it literally just showed me this something. And, we're going to talk about that. Everybody has to deal with their something, but your something is something you've talked about before. It's something you know exists. And we have some clinical counselors in the room. Brett is one here. And something is like a prism. It's this thing you were handed when you were really little, and you know it's there. My parents divorced. I've been dealing with that since I was 9. But what happens is as you start to deal with your something, then the prism changes and turns, and you just see it in a different light. And in order for you to become emotionally healthy, you have to dig into that something. You have a question?
Yeah, are you saying that everybody has something, or is that...
No. Yeah, that's what we said. We said too much or too little is unhealthy. And so when someone has excessive, it means that there's something that they haven't necessarily worked through. Go ahead.
So we've obviously got to work through this. The way that we deal with our emotional health is to have a plan. So the Bible says this in Proverbs 15:22. It says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many counselors they succeed. So we have to ask ourselves, what is our plan for our emotional health? In order to lead effectively, some of us need to identify first what our something is, and then we need to talk to someone, right? We need to go through that process of healing. Everyone needs counsel, especially the people who think you're emotionally healthy. Mm-hmm. You still need some level of counsel in your lives, and especially leaders, right? I mean, the devil is attacking leadership. Mm-hmm. So a simple way to act out this plan is by making sure that you have people in your life that you can go to, for wisdom, for advice, for counsel, that are at the first fill in the blank, the same age, the next stage, and wise sage. All right, so same age, a peer, the next stage, someone that's just a little bit above you, and then a wise sage, right? A seasoned person. This is so healthy, you guys. If you don't have this structure in your life, you've got to get there. For me, as a new mom, this has been really helpful for me to have. I have obviously just friends that are having babies at the exact same time I am, so I can go to them with the day-to-day, hey, what's so-and-so doing with this? And then, I have some moms that I'm really close to that are elementary age. They have elementary age kids. So they're that next season up. And then I use my parents a lot of the times as kind of the wise sage. They're getting old and gray. But they have a bigger picture that they're going to kind of enlighten me on. So I think that this is so helpful to have in our lives. And here's why this matters so much when we're talking about leading a group, this whole something thing. When you've got to, go to that next slide, work on something so it doesn't steal from your group. Do you want to touch base on any of that?
Yeah, I just want to talk about the same age, next stage, and wise stage real quick. I think there's two different parts here. When we're talking about counseling and you're talking about emotional, or you're talking about trauma, or you're talking about something, and your emotions kind of tell you, right? There's like a button, and really your emotions are a symptom of something, right? It's something going on. And so there's the part where you have this excessive emotion, and you need to figure out what that is. And that's going to start through a myriad of conversations. People that are peers, people that might be someone you look up to like a pastor, or someone who's an expert, like someone who is a grandparent or someone who is a professional counselor. So as you have this excessive emotion, you've got to move towards that. You have to say, something is going on here. I've got to start digging on this because it's just always flowing or not flowing, something's wrong. The other piece, though, because not everybody has this unhealthy emotion. Not everybody in this room has this something that has caused so much trauma that the rivers are flowing or there's none. That's not everybody in the room. But I would just say this, because as a pastor, as a leader, I have worked on my something. And I do have that something that I told you about. But I'm not, in all humility, I'm not unhealthy about it. I don't have an unhealthy response, and I've dealt with that, and I've sat with it, and I've worked through it, through all different kinds of things, prayer and conversations and all these different stages. But I still have these levels of counsel in my life because of maintenance. Because something could have happened a long time ago that causes trauma, and you have to work through that. Well, stuff is still happening every day in your life. And your emotions are a living, active, breathing piece of you. And so for me, I always think about guys like Peyton Manning, who is the best quarterback in the league, and he's playing tonight, and he's breaking all the records and won a Super Bowl. He has a personal coach. The best is still trying to get better. And so I would say, I want to make sure that I actually recommend that for you to have a successful life, you need this kind of counsel. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go see a licensed professional counselor, although I would heavily recommend it to anyone. If you work a stressful job, if you're a parent, if you're a husband, wife, if you are career driven, if you're just trying to navigate through any type of plan, there's an emotional piece that needs maintenance constantly. And so I go for literally 4 to 12 weeks a year and see a counselor. I've seen a sports psychologist. I've seen just a lay counselor. I've seen a Christian counselor. I've seen non-Christian counselors. And every time I do, I grow. And I work through stuff that's happening now and stuff that happened back then. And I find myself getting healthier all the time. So I just want to say that, we're talking about a lack of emotional health, but for those of you that are going to be in the leadership, you need to have a plan to make sure that you don't fall into a lack of emotional health.
Yeah, that's good.
Especially as a leader.
Right. And so specifically with a group, you've got to work on your something so it doesn't steal from your group. If you bring it to your group in a negative way, it can truly ruin it very, very quickly. Because here's a guarantee, there's going to be probably at least a person, if not more, that has a lot of somethings that they're bringing into your group. And that's a whole nother night, honestly, of facilitation and how you guys guide that and navigate that type of something in that group. But as a leader, emotions that have not been dealt with, they can hurt a group. I've seen this happen in my own group. In a group I was in during college, a leader, she had this story. And every single group time, it came back to the story of this, tragic situation that she went to. And our group, it just ended up revolving around that situation. It was really all we ever talked about. It was the only thing that mattered, blah, 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 And so she became very unfit to lead this group of 15 college-age girls because she wasn't actually leading us. Mm-hmm. So if you aren't emotionally healthy, it's very hard to lead other people who aren't emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
So our group, it became like a mini counseling session. I remember us going, okay, and we had no business counseling.
And you're counseling the leader.
Right. It's interesting. But I remember sitting around going, okay, how do we do this? Like, how do we take her through this? We didn't really know what to do. So, and, I think sometimes there's moments and there are times that it's healthy for, of course, you as the leader to share a struggle or to share a situation you went through.
Absolutely.
That's totally great, and we're not saying that.
No, yeah, I mean, that you as a leader, part of we've talked about over the past couple weeks is being authentic, being real. I'm going to talk more about that in the second hour. You have to be real. If you don't have emotion, if you don't have a problem, you're not authentic. People can't connect to you. But like this part, your something can't be the center of your group. Like it can't be this constant, every time I have to bring it back to my story. I mean, look at what we've done over the past couple weeks. The whole thing with drinking, with being real, is all about you affecting the people in your group and putting off, what did you memorize? You become weak, you become strong. As a leader, you're there to make sure that people are growing. And so if you're, this is the thing, and again, we're not going to have anybody stand up, sit down. We're not going to make you talk about your problem. We don't even necessarily know how to help you through it. We know where to send you to help you get through it, and we can pray for you and we can talk with you at a certain level. But if in your heart right now there's like a something, there's like zing, like this thing happened to me, or I had this experience, or this didn't happen to me. My mom didn't do this. Then that means you have a something, and that means that you need to dig in on it, because that cannot come out every time you're leading your group. It just cannot. And if you're the kind of person that feels this literally like horses behind a gate before a race, that every time you sit down to talk, you just have to tell your story, that means that you haven't worked through your something. You haven't worked through it. Because you're designed to eventually put it somewhere. You're designed to dig. You're designed to put it out. You're designed to work on it with other people in the group, because it's like, man, I'm going to sit down with people. We're going to sit down and talk. I'm going to finally have a place where I can tell them what's going on. If you just literally don't have that type of control, you need to back off until you do. And again, it doesn't mean you can't say, here's my story, here's something that happened to me, but there's a difference between your something being the center of the group and your something being part of the group. So that's what we're saying with that.
That's good. So as a leader, you have to be more focused on giving than getting in your group context. You can write these two words down. We didn't end up putting them in.
Withdrawals.
Withdrawal. We were saying, isn't that a weird word? We were working on this.
Hey, y'all want to take a withdrawal?
We kept spelling it without the A. You want to say withdrawal. But there's gives and gets in life, right? And so your group, as a leader, it's a time for you to give, not get. So it's a time, your group is not the place to be making withdrawals.
Right.
That's right, isn't it?
That's right.
It's not the place to be getting, right? It's not about me. It's not for me. It's not, the main goal. Of course, we hope this happens, but it's not for you to learn, for you to blah, blah, blah. No, you are, as a leader, you are giving. So
right.
You are depositing, right? You're just depositing and depositing and depositing into the people and in the lives of your group. Your group members are on the receiving end,
Yeah.
right? So you're giving. To lead a group, I think, you have to feel like you're at a place that you can be giving more than you need to be getting.
No.
You can't be that needy leader, right?
That's right.
That needs something. It's all about me, my story, wounded, empty, all of that. So when someone feels like you shouldn't be leading them because of this, the mannerisms, then you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
So they're looking at you to be the leader.
That's right. I would say that part of what we're doing with table time here, when you guys talk and get to know each other, is that the people that are at your tables can be the same stage, or maybe for some of us it's wise sage, Like I could tell you, Nick, like you need to get to know Brett. I mean, you already like drum, so you guys have a connection, but Brett is a licensed professional. Sorry, guys. Don't all bum rush Brett after this.
I'm coming, Brett.
Right. You give him lots of business. But like you need to get to know this guy because he is, 10 years ahead of you and he has all this experience. And that way, whatever you're going through, whether it's a real rough something or just a little something like we all have, then you can talk to him about it. And that way you don't have to go to your group to work through all that. That's really important. And a big piece of this is self-awareness. If the emotions are flowing heavy one way or the other, or they're not, then that should be something that is trying to tell you something. That means you got to go work on that something. You've got to do that. Otherwise, your group is going to be a train wreck. That means we're going to hear from people that are like, dude, when we go there, every time it turns into this song and dance and, wine and cheese and like it's just this nightmare. And that's not what a group needs to be. The people need to come into a group where the leader is dealt with their stuff and they have something in their cup to make a deposit. And this is the story of the life of Christ. And I talked about this at one of our other leadership trainings, not in this, but I talked about for our existing groups, is that Jesus was the king of deposits. Like, that's what he did. He came down here, I mentioned this the first week, he came down here, he was here for 30 years before he actually started his ministry. The whole thing was him just being present and making a deposit and being on earth and saying, I'm here for them, I'm going to build myself into this world at this time in this way. And then he went around and his whole purpose was to give. He emptied himself of his godness and became a human like us, and then he said, I'm going to give to them. I'm going to give to them. And so he went off and he had his time alone, and he went off into the desert and he fasted and he prayed, and there's times all throughout the scripture where he had his time alone where he could go and take a withdrawal. He would go spend with God and get filled back up again because he was fully human and he was, tired and he needed help. And so he would go do that, but then when he was out there, it says in the scripture that when he would look out on the people, that he had compassion on them. You, as a leader, need to have compassion for the people that come into the room. If you're not emotionally healthy, you have only compassion and something for you. It's all about me, my hurt, my brokenness. As a leader, when the people come into your group, you are a shepherd, you are a leader, you have them coming into your group, and you need to be thinking, what can I deposit? And if you're not emotionally healthy, you're not going to be able to do that. Now, Carmen and I are both not experts on emotional health, but what we've tried to do tonight is simply help you open up a door, have a conversation, and move down this road. And honestly, if there's anything inside of you at all that just kind of rings like there's a something, when I say something, boom, your mind goes to that, start a dialogue with one of those three types of people. Start a dialogue. Start working through it. Doesn't disqualify you if you start a dialogue. But we'll figure it out eventually if it's something that's really a lack of health. What else? That's it. So do you guys want to, we're done a little early on this one. Just 5 minutes, question, conversation, any thoughts, anything before we take a quick break? Go ahead, Tanya.
Well, as a leader, if we're supposed to be able to give deposits and everything, what do you guys suggest as far as where leaders link in so that they can,
Yes.
where do they plug in to get recharged?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, her question was just on the video, if we're supposed to be making deposits as leaders, then where do we get filled up? And there's a couple answers to that. Part of it is in your peer-to-peer relationships, right, that you've built as a leader. As a leader, you have to become a self-feeder. You should write that down. As a leader, you got to become a self-feeder. And there is just a moment, Tanya, where, look, I speak every single weekend, right? And that means that I'm going through content and I'm helping people with relationships and I'm constantly trying to figure out what to feed people. There is no way for me to do that unless I am constantly filling up the tank. So leaders are readers. Write that one down. You need to be reading books. You need to be feeding yourself. As you start to grow, you have got to nourish yourself. And that's with information, books. I literally bought 2 books this week. There's a new book by Ravi Zacharias called Why Suffering, and there's a book called 4-Chair Disciple Making. I bought both those books. I'm halfway through both of them. If you are going to lead people, the most important person you lead first is yourself. So you have to go to the scriptures. You have to fill yourself up there personally. You have to have your personal time. You have to have your reading time. You have to have your corporate time. And you need to have your group time. And I will tell you this, that once you as a leader kick your group off in the right direction, right, where you are set up to pour into them, and you spend a year, 2 years pouring, it will start to reciprocate. And you will start to go to the group, like this time my group, they said, we want to study the book of Galatians. And I said, well, I ain't teaching the book of Galatians. And I don't have any time for that right now. And so what I did is I said, every couple is going to study each chapter and come in and teach it. So each couple in our group, half of them, don't study the Bible. They don't know anything about the Bible. They went back, they studied the book of Galatians, and they came in, first time ever, they read the passage, let alone taught the passage. They learned a ton because when you teach, you learn. And I learned. So your group can be a place for you to grow. Does that help? Is that helpful? It's just, as a leader, you have to feed yourself. Anything else? Any other questions or thoughts? Or Carmen? No?
I have a thought.
Okay, thought.
I think like this something that we keep talking about, it like almost sounds like a bad thing, but like I know that something can like that something happened for a reason.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think it needs to be like defined as like, you are constantly saying like there's too much or there could be too little.
Yep.
But like you're saying that don't let that something define you.
Yes.
But okay, I guess I know like
Well,
what you're saying. It just needs to be like.
But I think like in the moment, at a certain time, in your group, your something can be a very powerful example
Absolutely.
or illustration. So it's not at
But there's
all
a
that
difference
you can't use
between you owning your something and your something owning you.
Right.
And when your something owns you, everyone goes, whoa, like this is, man, can we, step over here? But when you've worked through your something, or you have a good perspective on it, or you've healed, God's healed you through your, whatever that is, then your misery becomes your ministry. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the God of all comfort, who comforts us with strength so that we can comfort others with the comfort with which we ourselves have been comforted by. The word comfort means strength. So what happens is that you have an area of weakness. You get broken. It makes you emotional. You go and you deal with it. God does the supernatural refoundation and building. And then it becomes something that you can put in front of people and say, here's what it was supposed to look like. Here's what happened after this, and now look what God did. The whole story of Scripture in your life is the resurrection. All right, that's what it is. So you are going to, at some point, be able to take whatever brokenness you have, and it's going to bring glory to God because of this thing that only He can do, where He turns, He makes beauty from ashes, right? I mean, that's what He does. So that's a great thought. It will be a great thing when you're healthy.
Right. I just didn't want someone to like that's something that's like in their head and be like, man, like I feel really defeated tonight, like I can't get past it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like there are certain things which we'll talk about a little bit later, that you think right now, some of you, you might have something that something is so bad that you think, no way. No way this is ever going to turn into a strength. No way this is ever going to turn into ministry. No way I'm ever going to heal from this. And I promise you that's a lie. That's a lie from the devil. There's not one thing that God can't flip on the other side and turn into something beautiful, no matter what it is. I could tell you some stories right now, but just I haven't prepared them, and it would be probably too vulnerable. But I've seen some amazing things happen with people that have done things that they literally are so ashamed of that they can't even speak of them. And when they start to work through that, it turns into amazing, amazing strength. Anything else? Yep.
I was just going to say, I know I work with kids every summer. Sometimes they will bring things up that there's a place and a time, and I think same as leaders. You know, I may have went through something that people think is really bad, but maybe it's not the perfect place for me to
Right.
share that. And I think that's a good point to bring out. I mean, maybe a one-on-one with someone, maybe that's
Right.
kind of like when he was sharing last week about he doesn't share with everyone that
Sure. Right.
specific details.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's important for, some of the people in this room may lead kids groups or may lead high school students. So obviously, context is huge.
Right.
We tell that to our K through 5th grade leaders all the time.
I think it's
So.
it's extremely clear for someone who, everybody in here is 18 and older, okay? So if you are an adult and you are leading 5th graders, if your something is the center of your group, right? But you need to view every age group that way. You need to view every age group as my something can't be the center of this. It wouldn't be with 5th graders, and it shouldn't be with 35-year-olds with 5th graders, okay? All right?
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a break. And you want one more thing? Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that for maybe my something, that being a leader could be a tool to grow, and to deal with my something.
Yeah,
too.
it will be.
Not being emotionally healthy at the moment, but needing to step up and lead and be in control of something is a way to deal with that.
Yeah, I would say that I understand what you're saying, but I would be careful that a group in a leadership position is not an opportunity for you to work through your something. It will strengthen you in a certain sense, but there needs to be some work done before you step into that role. That's leadership, because everybody else is coming in and they need to work through something. And so if you can't lead what you don't live. You can't take people somewhere you've never been before. So if you haven't worked through stuff, one of the most powerful things that I've been able to bring to this church is the fact that I have trauma and I have something and I have to work through it. And there's no way that I can lead a group of people effectively if I can't in some way sympathize and empathize with what they're going through. But also, I can say to any person, CEO of a major corporation, a stay-at-home mom, no matter what it is, I can say nobody is too proud or should be too proud to go and work on their something. You know what I mean? Nobody. It actually makes you a leader. When you humble yourself to work through your something, you've really taken the first step of leadership. That is huge. If you just think you can posture as a leader, having the right things to say and, the right know-it-all and all, if you think that you can just kind of formulate that in front of people, you're in trouble. Because what's going on underneath is what's going to make or break the group. Okay? So let's take a break, and we'll start back up in about 7 minutes or so. Imagine, if you will, that my biggest problem is arrogance, just hypothetically. I had to learn
in such a difficult fashion, how much help I really need. When I was a freshman in college, I was nominated at Word of Life Bible Institute to be the president of the school. I walked in, and my roommates saw me, and some people saw me and met me, and they're like, this guy, he should be the president. I'm like, president? You're welcome, I'll be the president. You remember when you were in middle school and they had like the class president, or in elementary school, and the class president said, I'm going to make sure that every room has Nintendos. You remember Nintendo? And I was like, I'm voting for that guy. We're going to have duck hunting here. He's going to be the president. This is just kind of like a little more college version of that. It was me and two other people. One guy that was 5 years older than me, he had 1 degree. Another guy that was 10 years older than me had multiple degrees. Very mature, had a family, been married for a long time, right? Okay? I'm not even married. I'm in college. And when they asked me to give the speech to tell everybody why I should be the president, I was like, you are going to be so glad you had me do this. I mean, just, you're welcome. I wore a 3-piece suit. I got up there in front of 1,000 students, a small Bible college, and I did this message. And I got to tell you right now, even to this day, it was awesome. I got up in front of everybody, and I didn't even think that they could in any way other than just receive me and love me and thank me for doing this message. I got up there and I talked about John 15, and it talks about how God, he prunes us, right? Like we're kind of a tree or a bush or a flower, and he prunes us and he cuts things away that we shouldn't have, and he kind of nurtures growth. And I used this example. I thought it was so sophisticated and so educated. I used this example of this palace in Versailles in France, where all of the greenery and all of the gardens are trimmed in box shapes and straight lines, and the whole palace communicates that God is in control, and the picture is man over nature. And I said, you see how this is really what it is our lives are supposed to be like that. God over our lives shaping us. Dude, that'll preach. You're welcome. Let's pray. I mean, like, I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. In the bathroom the next day, I was in a stall, and I heard all these guys be like, that Joel guy is so stupid. He's so arrogant. He is an idiot. And I was like, oh, man, I wonder who they're talking about. I didn't meet any other people named Joel. I couldn't wait to meet that person and feel better about myself. That night at cabin time, it was cabin time. We're Christian school. Sounds weird, but we sit around and do these devotionals, right? And got to this one guy named Gabriel, and he looked at me in the face. We weren't even talking about anything. He just looked at me right in the face. He goes, I am really sorry to be you. I feel sorry for you. I would hate to be you. And I was like, who are you talking to? And he went on and he said, he said this to me, you are so arrogant. It is all about you, and everybody saw that. And I was just like, what? And I went through a year of school where, I'm telling you, don't feel bad for me, nobody liked me because I was so arrogant. And what God did is he said, I got to show you, this is something, your world revolves around you. It's all about you. That's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt the people around you. And the person who thought he needed help the least realized he needed it the most.
God took me through that trial to teach me that persona and that attitude and that thought, whether active or inactive in my head and in my mind, was not healthy. Was not healthy. And I had to get to a place where I went before God and I agreed with God on the reality of that arrogance or that ego or whatever, that is a real problem. And that if I'm going to be a good leader, I can't walk around with this type of baggage. And it was extremely difficult, and over the years there's been plenty of extremely difficult times in my life where I have had to identify something as a real problem and take it to God. Real leaders are real with God. Real leaders are real with God. And what that means is that you and I all have this something, these things, these issues, this sin, this problem, this attitude. And for you to be a great leader, you have to be humble, and you have to recognize your weaknesses, and you have to constantly have them before God. If you don't, then they are going to destroy you. And I experienced that. I mean, I experienced that in that moment. That was the worst single year in my life, how else to say it, relationally, socially. You know, it was awful. Nobody liked me. Everybody hated me. I guess I'll just go eat worms. It was horrible, and it was tough. And what happened is I had to get real with God, and when I was real with God, I found the peace that I was looking for. And it wasn't through trying to prove myself. Actually, after I did that talk and everybody was upset with me and I had that moment, I went into the leadership. I went to see the president. You know, I was that kid. I'm going to go find out if what I did was good or not. So I set up an appointment with him, and I sat in his office and I said, "Don't you think that what I did was fine? Wasn't it good?" And he looked at me and he smiled and he goes, "I thoroughly enjoyed it." And I took that at the time because of how self-centered I was, that it was like I did a good job. But what he meant was, "Joel, it was a flippin' spectacle. You're a piece of work." That's what he meant. It was just, I really enjoyed it was a euphemism for you got a lot of problems. And you put them right up in front of everybody, and it was funny. And so I went through this process where who I was and what God was calling me to be did not align. And the only place that I found peace was in this new approach to a relationship with God that everybody has to exercise in order to be an effective leader and to come to terms. Being real comes from finding rest. You see, when you walk through life, every one of us, me, you, we're looking for acceptance. And whatever that thing is that has caused you to grapple for it, it really represents this issue that you have inside of you where you're just not quite okay with you. And you haven't really looked at who you are and come face to face with what's good about you, what's bad about you, and you certainly do not want to embrace what's bad about you. And I did not want to embrace what was bad about me. But what that meant is this battle inside of me between trying to be accepted to the world and trying to feel peace inside. And if you don't find the inner peace that can only come from an appropriate relationship with God, then that is going to kind of pour out into other areas of your life where you're just trying to gain acceptance. And so a little bit of this is kind of dovetailing off of what we talked about, but in order for you to be real, in order for you to find rest, you have to accept you. Okay, you and I have to get to the point where we understand who we really are before God, the good and the bad. And you see, and you look at it and you go, yes, that is me. That's a problem. I get it. I accept it. And it's mine to deal with, and God, I need you to help me with it. But if you are walking around and you're trying to find acceptance and you're not really dealing with what you have, you're in trouble. You're just going to be chasing your tail. And so I want to show you a passage of Scripture that literally and figuratively blew the doors off of this tension of finding rest. Because you have to find this peace. You have to find acceptance. You have to be okay with you. And this happens in a relationship with God. You see, Scripture is called a mirror. And so the more you look in the Scripture, the more you see who you really are. And furthermore, what you're going to see in this passage is that the more that you appropriately and effectively communicate with God, the sooner you're going to accept yourself, and the more real you're going to be able to be with people. Have you ever been around someone who has a major problem, but they haven't accepted it yet? You know what I mean? It's like the elephant in the room, right? If you work with kids, this happens all the time. You know, little kid, he always has to be first. Always has to be first. And then, like, you do something, and you say, you don't need to be first this time. I don't always have to be first. Okay, you're right. You know what I mean? Like, when you're around someone who has an issue, and they have not figured it out yet, you're like, ooh, there's just some awareness here. There's just some realness here. They just don't quite know who they are yet. When you get made fun of, you see, for a while, like, when my family would, like, make fun of me, Joel, you just think you're so awesome. No, I don't. Yeah, I do. I had to come to the point where what everyone else had seen in me as an arrogant, as a cocky, overconfident individual, where I went, yeah, that is my problem. You're right about that. How real is that? How real is it to be able to take who you really are? And you know what? Also, it's like, I can come at that, and I'm not trying to say be down on yourself, but we all love to accept the parts of ourselves that are good. So this really plays into the parts that are ugly. It's okay for me to be okay with my confidence, for me to be okay with my abilities, for me to be okay with my gifts. But it's not okay if I don't see the downside of that and I don't recognize that, and it's always the elephant in the middle of the room. And so as a leader, you've got to be real with yourself, and it starts by being real with God. And if you can't be real with God, where are you going to be real? Now, how many things in your life are you really afraid to bring up in front of some trusted people, because if they found that out about you, or they thought that about you, you would feel defensive? That means that it's either true, or you haven't accepted the fact that people view you a certain way, and you don't have to be defensive about it. It's because there's sometimes people come at me with, they still think it's just arrogant. And I'm like, you know what? I definitely struggle with that, but I know what you're saying, and that's not what I'm going through right now. Your assessment is incorrect. I know that I can be, and I know that I will be, and I know that I have been, but right now I'm just making a decision, and this is more about you than it is about me, because I'm okay with the fact that I'm arrogant, or that I've messed up, or that I've been cocky, or that I've been self-centered, but your assessment is just you seeing something, because I've dealt with it. So I'm not defensive. Whatever that thing is that you're defensive about, that little thing that kind of gets under your skin, no, I don't. That means that there's just something in your life that you've just really not dealt with, and you're not real. You don't know exactly who you are. You haven't got to that place. So in Hebrews chapter 4, the author is taking the people of God through this journey. And what it really is about rest. Because in order to be real, you have to find rest. And rest means that you fully accept who you are. You've kind of embraced, this is my good, my bad, my ugly, all of it. And you get to that place. And what the author in chapter 4, verse 9 starts saying is after he's talked about basically a new regime, a new approach to having a relationship with God. The book of Hebrews is probably the most rich theological book in the New Testament, maybe the exception of Romans, but what you have is you have the author trying to communicate with Jews that have converted to Christianity and using kind of this layer of Jewish history to communicate their new relationship with Christ. And so what he does is he uses all these Old Testament analogies to show you the truth of your relationship with God now. And he says this in chapter 9. He says, "There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God." So what this means is that for you, there's a place of rest. So when you don't accept you and you're trying to find acceptance, you wear yourself out. You wear yourself out trying to figure out how you can be accepted without ever figuring out who you really are and accepting it yourself. And what the author is saying is that there is a place, there is a Sabbath rest for the people of God. There was a place in the Old Testament, it was called Jerusalem, it was the land that God had promised to the Israelites that was supposed to be rest. So in this passage, he's saying that God worked 6 days and then he rested. But also the people of Israel, at some point, once they followed God and they got real with God, that they would enter into this land, the land of milk and honey, the promised land, and they would find rest. And in the passage, what you see is you see a bunch of Israelites who were disobedient, who were not honoring God, who didn't really ever take their stuff to God and didn't really ever work it out and didn't really ever have a contrite heart and figure out who they were and who God was. And so they were punished and weren't allowed to enter into the rest. And you literally, in the first 5 books of the New Testament, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers, the book of Numbers, when I was in school, they taught us that don't think of the book of Numbers as a book of numbers. Think of the book of Numbers as a book of wanderings. Wanderings. Because what happened is the people were disobedient. They didn't really ever get face to face with God, figure out who they were, and say, we're going to do this right and receive the rest that you've promised us. They started to worship false gods. And so God said, no, you don't get to have the rest. So now you're going to go wander. And they wandered for a generation, 40 years. They just wandered around in the desert, and they counted each other. As one of the families died, the next one got counted. And that's why it's called the book of Numbers. But it's really a book of wanderings. It's a book about not having rest. You see, when you don't come face to face with God, the way that you're designed to come face to face with God around your sin, you don't find rest. And what the author of Hebrews is saying is, there is rest for you. There is a rest where you accept who you are and you accept God's love for you and you get to enter into, oh, thank God I don't have to try anymore. Thank God I don't have to just spin my wheels and try to make myself okay with God. Thank God I don't have to be my own God and worship idols that were just made out of wood. Worship the creation and not the creator. Thank God I don't have to spin my wheels. And what he's saying is there's a place for you to have rest. And in the Old Testament, rest was symbolized with a place. Like I said, it was symbolized with a place. When you got to that place, you would find rest. Sorry about this mic. But he goes on and he says this. He says, let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience. What he's saying is, you guys, you haven't accepted yourself. You have this sin problem. It's real. Like you have an issue. You have something in your life. It's just constantly going to be nagging at you. And you are therefore not getting to enter into the place of rest because you haven't accepted your issue and you haven't brought your issue before God. And when you just live and let your issue affect you and you don't live and love God, he says you don't get to enter the rest. But if you deal with your sin, you get to enter into the rest. So the doorway to peace in your heart is through confession. It is recognition of your sin. before God so you can enter into rest. That is the key. And it is so difficult because the devil keeps telling us that our sin is not our sin. That's not a problem. Our egos tell us that, oh, this is a good part about me, not a bad part about me. And we don't ever actually figure out what our stuff is, so we don't actually deal with it the right way, and we end up spinning our wheels. Look what he says. He says, for the word of God, this passage, you've read this passage before. If you grew up in church, it's taken out of context all the time. It's literally right after what I just read to you. Think about that. There's this rest. Make every effort to enter into the rest. 4, the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates even to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and the attitudes of the heart. He's saying, for you to enter into rest, you have thoughts and attitudes in your heart that are evil and wicked, and only the Word of God in the presence of God will reveal those things. And when you get to that spot, now you're real. Now it's, I am broken. Here's my problem. This is what's going on inside of me. What you see in this passage is that he's saying there's a place of rest for you to go. Your thoughts and your attitude is stopping you from entering the rest. And the Word of God and the presence of God will be what breaks down those thoughts, those attitudes that are in your heart that are evil and wicked. And you've got to figure out a way to unpack that in a healthy way. Now, rest is found in a person. You see, in the Scriptures, we learn that the Word of God is Jesus. In the beginning was the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So the Word of God is Jesus. So rest was a place, now it's a person. And the only way you're going to find it is to say, okay, there's something here, I've got to accept it, and I've got to understand God's perspective on my sin and baggage so I can enter into this place of rest. Look what he goes on and he says. He says, nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him to whom we must give account. One of the greatest problems in us being real as leaders is we think that we can hide that baggage. We think that we can hide that sin because the people that are around us don't know about it, or our best friends don't know about it, or our spouses don't know about it. We think, man, I've got this stuff over here, nobody knows about it, and I'm good. Or I've got something going on over here and I don't even know how bad it's affecting my life. So we think we can just walk through life and everything's fine. And it says right here that your thoughts, that your actions, your attitudes in your heart, God literally, they're your baggage, and he's like, I can see that. I know what you're dealing with. And we literally walk around with our stuff and we think God has no idea what we've got. I'm good. I just don't want to talk about this. But I can see it. Yeah, but they can't see it. So we spend so much of our time not experiencing rest because we're not willing to take this thing and go, okay, God, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm really struggling with this. And he's like, I know. I know you are. No, God, people think that I am self-centered. I know. I hate that. I know you do. You see, there is a rest that happens in our life when we take our stuff, we recognize that God can see it, and then we talk about it with him. You can hide your heart from people, not from God. He can see it. He can see this peace. And until you truly embrace this baggage, this sin, this issue, whatever this thing is, you can't be real. Because you're hiding something. And what's funny is you think you're hiding something from God, but you're not. You're just deceiving yourself. He goes on, he says, this is one of my favorite, the next couple of verses are absolutely incredible. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. So what he does is he says, you guys used to take your sin into the priest. Now, I'm not going to do a whole diagram on how they would sacrifice the lamb, but essentially there was about 5 different courts. And there was, in this temple, in this tabernacle, where they would sacrifice a lamb that was kind of representative of covering all the people's sin for the entire year. And only one time a year would the high priest go into the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, and this is where they would sprinkle the blood of this lamb on this altar, and that is the place one time a year that was so perfect, it was so designed to basically say that God is serious about your sin. And it takes blood to wipe away your sin. And only one person can go in to this place and perform this on behalf of all the people of Israel. Now, throughout the years, I'm not real fresh on some of this stuff, but throughout the years, the people living in the tabernacles, because before they actually built the temple, they would build tents and they would do this type of worship and sacrifice. Before that would happen, sometimes the priests would go in with an unhealthy attitude or an unhealthy thought or maybe some sin in their life. And so they would go into this place, and I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but the priests would wear special robes, and they would actually put bells on the robes, because when the priest would go in there, if they stopped hearing the bells, then they knew that maybe he dropped down and just died because he was in the presence of God. And so they would tie a rope to the priest with the bells, and when the priest would stop making noise, they'd just yank him out. And what the author is saying is we have this great high priest who is absolutely perfect. And you can talk to him. And he's there for you to have a conversation with. And he goes on, he says that, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, without sin. What he's saying is that the God of the universe, he became fully man. He emptied himself. And in a sense, the baggage that you are carrying, he has actually felt that weight. But he didn't sin. He didn't give in to it. And so you don't have this priest that has to be perfect and is this human representation of God on earth. No. You have God who actually understands you. He understands you. He's experienced what you've experienced. He just didn't ever give in to the sin. But he felt the weight of the sin. He felt the weight of the baggage. And he says, you can take your weaknesses to a God who understands your weaknesses. You can take your weaknesses to a God who understands your weaknesses. And then he says this, and this is probably one of my favorite passages in all of the Scripture. He says, therefore, or let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. The word confidence here means informally. So the high priest had to do it in a perfect way at the perfect time and the perfect, measure. But we don't have to do that anymore. Now you have a God who understands your weaknesses, And you can go into God, and you don't have to dress up. You don't have to say it a certain way. You can take your baggage right in, and you can say, I need to talk to you about this. I need to talk to you about this. And when you go in, he's going to actually help you with it. So whatever that thing is that's holding you down, that you're afraid of, that you're afraid of like recognizing, that you're afraid of talking about, that you're afraid, that sin, that maybe it happens all the time, maybe whatever it is, you don't want to admit it. You're going, wait a minute. God actually prepared a way so that I would boldly run up to him with my crap. Even in my prayers, sometimes I will try to like church it up because I forget this. He says that you may receive mercy. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. So if you deserve punishment, you get to take the thing in that you're like, I deserve to be punished for this. That's why you don't tell anyone about it. That's why you don't face it. I deserve to be punished for this. You get to take that into God and be like, this is my problem. And he's like, I know. I'm aware. You can come and talk to me about this anytime you want. You see, the problems that you get to take in front of him, they require mercy, they require grace because they're so awful. And we want to act like they don't exist. And God says, I am here because they do. You can talk to God. This is it. As a leader, you can talk to God about anything and everything, and he wants you to. He designed it so that you would. That thing that you're carrying, that you try to carry alone, he doesn't want you to do that. He wants to give you mercy. He wants to give you grace. He wants to tell you like, I know. And when you get to that place where you recognize how broken you are and you can talk to God about it, it's the beginning of healing. You see, for me, and I'll end with this, for years, you guys, I promise you, for whatever reason, my dad was raised Catholic, so I was raised in this like Catholic/evangelical thing, where it's like you have to go to church, but you're born again. Like it was just this totally interesting thing, but there was a lot of rules. And I thought this about my prayer life. I thought, okay, I've got crap in my life. I'm just going to put it in this bag. And I'm not going to talk about it with anybody. And I'm actually not going to talk to God about it. I'm actually going to try to go talk to God about it and hope that he doesn't bring it up. So I literally thought that like talking to God was like going to talk to the CEO of a major corporation. Like I would have to call in and set up an appointment. Right? I used to think like I have to like, okay, I got to have like my quiet time. I have to have that. Right? If I don't have my quiet time, how am I going to talk to God? Like he needs an appointment. And then I thought that like I have to show up on time. I have to show up, and I thought that I had to wear a suit, and I have my suitcase, and I thought that I had to go into the reception and say, hey, I'm here to talk to God, kind of warm up, sit there in my prayer life and be like, God, just help me to have a good attitude. I thought I had to go through all this stuff. I thought I had to go up to the elevator and press 30th floor, go all the way up, and in my head, I promise you, talking to God was like walking through double doors with this cherry wood floor and this huge desk with the library behind him and the ladder, and he's sitting there in this three-piece suit with the perfect hair, and I come to him and I have to stand right in front of him and just say, God, thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for forgiving me. Help me to love people. Help me to do the right things. I thought I had to have a presentation for him to listen to me. That's what I thought it was like until I read this. Because what this does is this says, that when you go into God's space, that he knows you have this crap, and he's like, I want to talk about that. 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 I already know. Everything is laid before me. I made a way so that you could come in here and actually talk to me about your baggage. Joel, you don't have to say like, thank you. You don't have to say like, will you please? You don't have to do like, can you come in and talk to me about what you need mercy for? Because this sin thing, this broken thing, that's what you need mercy for, is the crap. Stop bull crapping, Joel. Stop BSing. Stop acting like you're going to say it a certain way and it's going to make me go, okay, I'll let it go. I learned that the purpose of God in my life, besides just being glorified and giving me eternal life, was for him to carry my load, to take my burden. And my burden was my sin, and he took it on the cross. And I just thought that I was supposed to hold it, and I was afraid. And he's like, I literally want to take that from you. I came to take that thing from you so you don't have to carry it. And you're acting like you have to say it a certain way and that you don't even want to talk about it. What am I here for? What are you ashamed of? I already see it anyway. I already know what you're doing, what you're thinking, your attitudes. I already know it. And it just changed me. It just absolutely changed me. And my prayer life, my time reading the Bible was totally different. When I was 18, it literally just was revolutionized. The burden of formality was erased. And my prayer life became this real, gritty, all the time, anytime, informal conversation with God. I mean, you guys, I talk to God, and I'm not boasting about how I talk to God. I'm telling you that he has brought me to this place where I literally say the most stupid, the most insignificant, the most dark and dirty things to him in any moment. Just all of it. I don't even address him. I don't say like, hey, God. I am with him. He is with me. We are on a journey. We are in a relationship. And I'm just like, I'll say anything. I'll literally, I will curse. I will say the F word. I'm telling you, everything. That is my place where everything, my attitude, my heart is real. And I'm like, this is my God. This is stupid. I hate this. This is wrong. And he goes, yes, it is. And I'm here for you. I want to help you through that. I talk to him about everything. Can you talk to God about everything? Have you got to the place where that ickiness, that brokenness, that baggage, that sin is literally on the table in the conversation with God? Because if it's not, you're not experiencing the relationship with God that he designed you to experience. He's not there for the righteous, for the perfect. He's there for the sick, for the broken. That's me, and that's you. So my relationship with God turned from the 30th floor to the backyard. I literally view my conversations with God like I'm playing baseball with a friend. I am just like, hey, you want to go get coffee now? Hey, that really hurt me. I know, sorry. Hey, will you throw that again? I mean, literally informal. I will say anything, any way to God. It's already laid before him. I can't act like he doesn't know. So as a leader, you've got to come to this place in your life where you're real. I'm a mess. Now, you're not supposed to tell everybody everything, and you don't need to air all your dirty laundry all the time. This is my major problem. You'll freak people out. If I told you what I was really thinking, you'd be like, whoa, this is darker than I thought. But I take that to God. And can I tell you, my thoughts have changed over the years? If you can't go to God with your deepest, darkest crap, where are you going to take it? How are you going to grow? How are you going to ever be real? I just want to have a group of leaders who are really interested in an authentic relationship with God. One that's just like, man, everything I am, he knows, I know, I'm confident. I've accepted my junk. He's told me. The word confession means to say the same thing. To say the same thing. What it means is you agree with God. So if you go before the judge and the judge is like, you were going 93 miles an hour, and then confession means, yes, I was going 93 miles an hour. It's to say the same thing. A healthy relationship with God is where you and him agree on you. And if he is trying to show you that sin or that thing or that problem, and you don't agree with it, you're not on the same page with God. And you can't be a real leader. I'm sorry, it's just, you've got to get to that place. Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those that recognize their spiritual need. So, I know this is a lot of heavy stuff. And this is the first time I've ever put this talk together. So it's going to get better and better and better. But I hope that you guys are getting my heart here. My heart on this issue. Take your junk before the Lord. Get real with God. You don't have to go into your closet. You don't have to say it a certain way. You don't have to write it in a journal. You don't have to do it any way. You can do it any way you want. You can be real. You can just say it in your head. You can just, one of the things in my prayer life that's just changed me is I almost don't even view that prayer is an act. I almost view that prayer is a constant awareness of God's presence. It's just like, I don't really think about talking with someone that I love, like what I'm going to say. I just talk with them. Now, when you think about prayer in the technical sense of asking for things or whatever, yeah, it gets a little bit, but do you know that he's there all the time? Does he see what you see? Are you aware of what he sees? Are you on the same page with God? I digress. It's 8:49. Did you have a thought or a question? And we'll be done.
It was interesting to hear that perspective on it. Because today we were talking about James 5:16. We were going through James in my school group, and we were at the end of it, and it was confess to your brothers your sins. And Pastor David was like, why did James said that? What's the significance and importance? I mean, if we would take it to God like we were saying, then why would we have to take it to other people? And I wonder how many of us are more ashamed to take it to God versus to take it to other people.
Yeah.
I take my crap to God with, confidence, like,
Sure.
stuff I give you every knows. But I'm more ashamed to take it to my friends and my community.
Yeah.
Believers. And it was just, would you say that taking it to God would be the first step, and then taking it to your brothers and sisters would be the second step?
I hear my group is literally, we just decided last week that we're going to go on a road trip, all guys, with guys, because of this issue. Who on earth really confesses their sin to other people? I mean, they're real crap. It doesn't happen. I mean, you do it in a Bible study. I mean, good for you, man. I mean, you're talking, but I mean, I bet you still don't bring everything on the table.
Well, I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
This is a men's accountability.
No, I know, and I'm not. I know.
Say this is for small groups.
No. I know that, and I appreciate what you said, and I'm not. I'm agreeing with you and continuing forward with your thought that confession, to really take your baggage and put it in front of somebody. Oh my word, we are so afraid to do this. We are so ashamed to do this. There is no way you confess your sins to the people around you before you truly deal with them in front of God. Because God is the one who gives you the mercy, gives you the grace. He gives you what you need in the midst of that weakness. Well, people aren't always going to do that. And you could lose face, you could lose place with people when you take your stuff. But part of it, to me, is the same thing. It's the process of recognizing who you really are. And it's also the process of making sure that the things that are really bad don't destroy your life. That's the part where you bring other people. I talked about a couple months ago, the truth is found by two, not just you. So this is the concept of bringing something into the light. Helping one another in James, or Galatians, bearing one another's burden.
And one of us in the group struggled with pornography, and we were talking about how, why is this important? And I was like, well, God is not going to take away his iPad, but one of our men did.
Sure.
Because he confessed it.
Yeah.
And God used him
Yes.
to say, hey, I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to take your iPad. And then that's how, God is working through us. So I think it is an involved step to share
It is.
one another.
It is. Well, because it's like, until you take it before God and he calls a spade, you're ashamed of it. Until you look at it and go, this is really a problem. And the other thing about confessing to one another is everybody has that something, that sin, that brokenness. Anything else? Questions, thoughts?
Just going off of that, I deal with that all the time with high schoolers, I work with high school, middle schoolers, I encourage, dialogue about sin, not only because we're instructed to in the Bible, but because it's no longer you against, it's we against.
Yeah, yeah.
You have people praying for you.
Yeah.
Hey, this week I had a lot of success in this area, and I don't know really what it came from.
Yeah.
It came from us praying for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people can't see that.
Yeah.
And it comes with time, but I think that's crucial that,
Yeah.
that's another reason why you confess your sins.
Sure. Now, again, in the context of a group, I'm not talking about your group becoming a confession moment. That's not what I'm saying. No, yeah, you were. You're good. You're good. Great groups evolve to that. But this is about your personal relationship with God. That's what this piece is about. Yeah.
I will say there came a point in my life where I had been dealing with mental health issues and all of this, and went to someone who pushed me in a direction of not formalizing, but systematically going through my relationship with God.
Sure.
And putting my prayers down. For me, it was helpful.
I absolutely.
It was helpful in a journal, and she led me to the passage about how desire takes root and grows into
Yeah.
to sin. And when I finally was able to put those things down,
Yes.
and see them,
Yes.
that really was the beginning
Good.
of developing a more personal relationship.
Writing them down could be the light, the articulating. It's a feeling. It's an issue. I haven't quite understood it. I'm not saying that journaling's bad
Oh, no,
at all.
it's different for everybody. I mean, for some people, it may be that you do need to go sit
Yeah.
down with someone
Yeah.
that you trust and
Absolutely.
lay this out in front of them. And I did that.
And that helped
with
you.
Some things, and then, yeah,
It helped you get real.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I will also say, within a few months, I had to throw those journals away because
Yeah.
you don't ever want
Someone to read that. That's the point, though, right? I mean, we think that God doesn't know.
absolutely.
Yeah.
When I got real with him and said,
Yeah.
he doesn't know.
Get real, man.
That's when, it was already a real relationship for him.
Sure. Yes. But was it for you?
But it wasn't.
Hey, people aren't going to follow you if you are fake. They're not. They're just not going to be interested. They're not going to. Anything else? Man, Carmen and I, as we prepared, we just love you guys. Like, we believe that some amazing stuff is going to come out of this. We already have, like, Carmen, how many people on a list we have just waiting to be in a group? Lots of people. Lots of people that are just waiting for you guys to take all this training and lead them. And we need it. So I'm going to pray for us. Just a reminder, next week we are not meeting. Next week is Halloween. And then we have 2 more weeks after that. Yep.
Hey, just for the people that weren't here last week, I just want to make sure that I did it.
Oh, yeah. Not one of my weaknesses. And baseball.
Did you mention that when you were nominated, when you were doing your presentation?
Did I mention that I played high school football when I was doing my presentation? No. I should have.
I'll be proud to know if nobody liked you, who in the world nominated you?
They liked me until I did that. It was bad. Well, it's like, it's like, think about it. Like, you're in the first month, and it's like, oh, that guy looks like he could, whatever. And then put him up there in front of everybody. Ooh, no. Nah, I have friends that were there that will tell you how bad it was. One of them is. Anything else? You're welcome. Good. I hope it's helpful. Get real. It's a game changer. All right, let's pray. God, thank you so much that we can talk to you anyway. We can be real. And I pray for every person in here, God, that they would deal with their something if they need to, and that they would get real with you. I mean, help them to stop playing games, to just find the freedom in talking to you about that baggage that you see, it's there. Help us to be great leaders. Help us to have healthy groups. Help this church to be an amazing place for people to grow in a relationship with you. In Jesus' name, amen. See you guys in 2 weeks.